From fan favorite hits to creepy and disgusting stories, these are some of the most loved and hated books by YouTubers, starting with Jake Paul's You Gotta Want It. This is the worst book I've ever read. I would not even give a star, not even half a star, and it becomes crystal clear why this book was so bad as soon as you start reading the About Me section.
But then he runs out of information and just starts listing pointless shit. I'm wearing sweatpants. He ends the About Me section with, my brother Logan is telling me that this book should be all about girls, but I say no, this book is all about... Wait, that's a good question.
I don't know what this book is trying to accomplish, and I can safely say it gets nowhere close.
Jake tries very hard to share his wisdom and advice with the rest of the world, but the problem is that all of his advice is absolutely terrible.
He's talking about being in a car with his brother and speeding, like literally breaking the law by going at 170 miles per hour, and he's like, this is how we should live our lives. What kind of advice is that?
And his deep quotes sounded like he was talking right out of his ass.
Some days your underwear sticks in your butt crack. Pick it out, laugh it off, and get going again.
As the book progressed, the theme started changing from Jake advising others to follow their dreams to instead talking about things that are best left undiscussed.
Number 1, while girls are occupied with their hairstyles, clothes, and shoes, he knows so much about girls. Most guys in the 8th grade are thinking about what girls look like after all that's removed and they are in their underwear or bathing suit.
Seems like the more Jake started typing out his stream of consciousness, the creepier he started to sound.
This chapter, called Hello Ladies, is his experience with puberty, something that for some reason he's telling us about. At one point, he unintentionally encourages all the young kids reading to Google what sex is, which in hindsight, probably not the best advice.
As if that wasn't bad enough, his book started getting more and more inappropriate with every page.
He spends a lot of time recounting his first sexual experiences, describing the girls he liked and made out with. Holy shit, dude. This whole time I was also texting Julie. I'd figured out the facts of life and then some. Julie and I went into my room together and made out. Then, after a while, her hands went places and so did mine. And suddenly we were past making out in brand new territory. At least for me, I was like, oh my god, this is the best moment ever.
Where Jake Paul's book turned him into a laughingstock, Pewdiepie's book instead got praised for his sarcastic and satire humor. On June 12, 2015, Pewdiepie announced his new book titled This Book Loves You by making a video on it. It was clearly meant to be a book made of satire jokes, making fun of deep quotes that Pewdiepie never liked.
Nothing in life comes easy, so why do you expect something out of a quote?
And the rest of the book is full of parodies of quotes, some of which mock the readers directly.
To fly, you must get rid of the things that weigh you down. This is why all of your friends left you. Perfection is something unattainable, so just accept your shit.
Despite how unusual this book was, his fans still enjoyed every page. The world isn't ready for such wisdom. This book is such an absolute masterpiece and all-time classic that life imitates it. On the other end of the spectrum lies Onision, whose book takes the cake for being the most disturbing piece of YouTuber writing to ever exist. Published on September 11, 2015, Onision's book, This Is Why I Hate You, is a dictionary definition of a disaster with an average rating of 1.79 stars out of 5 on Goodreads. However, straight out of the introduction, you can tell that the protagonist of the story doesn't sound like a sane person. You reading this now, admit your life is meaningless and admit you don't matter. Admit humanity is a disease to this planet, admit what we are and wonder why you even bother trying. I see people smile and I feel sick. I see people praying in front of my school in the morning and I'm overwhelmed with disgust.
Our lives are so all pointless. Like, the majority of this book, it's completely nihilistic.
He tries very hard to sound deep and smart, but ends up talking about the most basic things ever.
So far, the book is just Greg ranking over how life is meaningless and how no one else has ever thought of this philosophy before because he's just so smart and edgy.
And just to confirm how messed up his mind is, he begins casually describing something very dark.
I've noticed for some time Chris has an adorable little neck. I imagine if I wrapped my hands around his throat using only half my strength, I could very easily snap his neck. To end a life is no easy task. You can pull a trigger, and in the physical sense, that's one of the simplest things you can do. But I'm not a sociopath. Are you sure about that?
And when talking about a girl he used to date, his overwhelming negativity soon turns into downright creepy behavior.
Ashley is a product of my imprisonment. I literally have millions of little potential human lives screaming within me to impregnate her as soon as humanly possible. I regularly imagine unleashing inside of having kids with her, and I can actually feel the authentic admiration for such an outcome. Sometimes I think about her begging me to impregnate. That the mere notion ignites arousal in both my body and my mind.
This man's obsession with the phrase impregnate is extremely alarming, and this is a reoccurring theme in this book, where he talks in detail about many different girls that he comes across.
There are several women who he's infatuated with, becomes obsessed with. When things don't cater to how he wants them, well, he tosses them aside. Just like your real relationships. Wow, the irony in that.
Onision is the reason why girls have to cover their shoulders in school and are scared to go out at night. If Narcissistic Personality Disorder was a book. While Onision came across as narcissistic, who sees everything negatively, the next person on our list shows how to write a book that shares knowledge and positivity to the world instead. Charlie McDonnell is an OG YouTuber known for making videos about fun science facts, something he was very passionate about. So on October 16, 2016, he published a book titled Fun Science, A Guide to Life, the Universe, and Why Science is So Awesome. This was to share his passion for science, and it got a strong rating of 4.25 stars. This book does a great job at discussing loads of different scientific concepts, from cosmology to geology to neuroscience to quantum mechanics, in a way that is understandable and fun. The illustrations and humor in the book are also great. Would definitely recommend. In addition to having great content, he also used a lot of silly doodles throughout the book, making it a great experience for everyone to enjoy. While Charlie's book inspired his fans by sharing his passion, Ninja's was a book more about glazing himself. On December 3rd, 2019, Ninja published a children's graphic novel where he himself is the main character. And although it sounds like a cool and unique idea, the way Ninja portrayed himself only made himself look worse to everyone.
Well, are you coming or what?
Relatable protagonist, everyone. Like 4 pages in, the guy is just a complete douchebag.
Ninja is seen to constantly brag about himself throughout the book, and everything that happens only makes himself seem better than everyone else. Truly one of the most horrendous thing an egotistical influencer could ever come up with. Ninja's ego is so large it manifested into a physical book series. Unlike Ninja, the next YouTuber on our list shows that patience and effort can turn a book into a masterpiece. OG YouTubers Dan and Phil announced the book on their channel on October 9, 2015, and they did not disappoint. Their book, The Amazing Book Is Not on Fire, which is a combination of their usernames, received thousands of positive reviews, and it was very well deserved. Their writing style flowed seamlessly.
They write and they're sort of constantly in conversation with each other, and it's really nice.
And they also designed it to look as cool as possible. They also put in a lot of effort for the fans, like adding screenshots of funny conversations, sharing their friendship behind the scenes, and even making a manga.
Dan and Phil manga volume 1, and it's just really beautifully drawn, and I thought that was really cool and creative.
Well written book, very funny and lots of great photos. Everything a proper Dan and Phil fan wants is in this book. Their sense of humor comes across perfectly in print, and their friendship is both apparent and fun to share in. Best purchase ever. While Dan and Phil took their time and put in a lot of work to make the perfect book, the next YouTuber just published a book that is borderline illegal. Popular PDF file Colleen Ballinger published her first children's book titled Self-Help under the name of her character Miranda Sings on July 21, 2015. Miranda's character is known for a satire and personality that's not meant to be taken seriously, and her book is also written to be taken as a parody, with its description saying that it contains instructions for things like getting a boyfriend and dressing for a date. However, there were a number of problems with this book.
Even with the parody label, a lot of this humor and content is just inappropriate for children. It's gross, it's weird, it's kind of borderline predatory.
Besides the inappropriate stuff, this book barely has any real content at all, and the stuff it does have is super questionable.
This is a page all about how to wipe your bum after you've been to the toilet, and it contains diagrams of poo being folded into.
And even when it does make some successful jokes, none of them sound like they're meant to be understood by children.
This page is called Get a Boyfriend Kit, and it includes things like, perfume, like you might normally have, but also stalking materials.
And some just seem to be way too dark, like our page on first date etiquette.
You have to basically abuse your date. Physically punch them, hit them, spit near them, pull a hair, verbally tell them they're ugly, emotionally act uninterested and bored to hurt their feelings. I don't find domestic violence and intimate partner abuse funny.
Colleen also includes quite an unhealthy amount of slut shaming for no reason, and then it starts to get weirder and weirder, and Colleen stops being subtle about her jokes.
You wear high heels, you're a slut. Then she has a section, but she titles it, How to Do Children. Ha ha ha, so funny from the woman who's been accused of being inappropriate with children.
And she includes many photos of kids who are very, very young, and sometimes in inappropriate ways.
Playing dress up. You can have them dress as a dog or a homeless. That's offensive, but also, she then has a photo of a kid crawling on hands and knees while she has a rope tied around his neck. Again, who thought this was okay to publish?
And even the drawings and illustrations are something extremely disturbing.
It's a thing about her being born, and it has this picture of a doctor, like, in between this woman with her legs wide open, and like it's meant to look weirdly sexual, like he's having sex with her, I think. That's the joke. That's funny.
Like literally showing drawings of genitalia.
Penis jokes for kids. There's this thing about drawing a person and, oh look, he's got a massive penis. Then there's this page on how to draw a hot dog, which is literally a vagina joke, but they messed up because apparently they didn't put the red ink on this page or something.
And sometimes Colleen even starts openly making sexual references and incest jokes.
How to cuddle. And you'll see there are things like where it's basically Miranda's laying on the floor looking scared and a man is on top of her straddling her. It looks like rape. That's the joke. The uncle raped her. That's apparently what's funny. The uncle wrote a thing about bases in a relationship. I think it's meant to be funny. On the first date, you might want to take someone to the movies or to your uncle's house because it's a very private place where you can play with your daddy saddle.
And she tries to disguise inappropriate jokes in every page that she could.
And a tuna salad where you put both in bag and squeeze into mouth, and then it has this photo of her essentially squeezing white liquid onto her tongue. And again, it's clearly meant to be a blowjob in mouth joke.
Her whole incest jokes with her uncle are not only disgusting and unfunny, but dangerous. Is she intending to normalize this behavior so kids think it's okay? Someone explained to me how this was published and marketed for kids. Where Colleen shared her advice that nobody asked for or needed, the next YouTuber instead decided to share something a lot more personal and meaningful to his community. On October 20, 2015, YouTuber Tyler Oakley published his autobiography detailing his life, struggles, and rise to fame. It was raw, hilarious, and emotional, winning the hearts of the readers and becoming a New York Times bestseller. No words, probably one of the best books I've read this year. Not gonna lie. This was an amazing book. It was hilarious, funny, and yet it still managed to make me cry. I feel a lot closer to Tyler now than ever imaginable, and this is one of the best YouTuber books I've ever read. Not only was it super detailed and emotional, talking about deeply personal aspects of his life, it was also entertaining and hilarious to read. The writing style didn't disappoint either. Completely perfect. I laughed out loud, I gasped, I covered my eyes in secondhand embarrassment, and I may have also shed a few tears. This is an absolute must read. Where Tyler showed how to publish a masterpiece that inspires others, Lily Singh instead provides a masterclass on how to not write a motivational book. On March 28, 2017, Lily Singh published her book titled How to Be a Boss, A Guide to Conquering Life. It even came with a cinematic fight video on her YouTube channel to build up the hype and expectation amongst fans. However, only to be a big letdown, with cliche, brain-dead advice that doesn't help anyone. For example, don't give up before you even try, and nah, you can do better than that. Stop being a whack sauce. And although Lily tried hard to share her life lessons with the audience, she didn't manage to come across the way she intended to. This book deserves nothing more than a 1-star rating. The writing style is really preachy and know-it-all. I don't usually quit books midway, but this one was so bad, I could not get past 50 pages. Lily's know-it-all style of writing only backfired massively, and it seemed to be very repetitive to the audience.
It's like everything is an analogy, and not everything needs to be. It's also very much what I would refer to as toxic positivity, and by that I mean it's overwhelmingly like rainbows and unicorns, like everything has to be perfect.
And the advice that it contained was also quite shallow and generic, and sometimes her advice came across as more toxic and harmful rather than useful.
Actually, it kind of advertises the view that if you're not seeing everything in a totally positive way, then you're seeing it in the wrong way, and I don't know necessarily if that is the best way to be. It was just a lot.
Where Lily came across as boring and unoriginal, YouTuber Hank Green instead wrote and published a creative masterpiece with the world. Hank Green, popular for his YouTube channel Crash Course, dove into the world of science fiction and published the book A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor on July 7, 2020. With tens of thousands of positive reviews, his book has made it to the New New York Times bestseller list. The book had great plots and twists that hooked the readers throughout, giving the fans exactly what they expected from Hank. My mind has been blown, my heart has been filled, my crops have been watered. This is the best thing I have read in ages. Amazing, pure and utter brilliance. While Hank Green spent ages planning and writing a brilliant series of books, YouTuber Gabby Hanna instead rushed her book and got laughed at by the entire internet. Although the average rating is 3 stars, about every 1 out of 4 reviews is a 1 star. Absolutely one of the worst garbage fire pieces of trash I've ever read. I don't know how this got published. While another user wrote, "I need bleach for my eyes," and tagged it with mental illness and trash. First of all, most of the poems in this book don't even sound like poetry.
A lot of this is either just blatant page filler or very short poems that have the depth of an above ground pool that hasn't been filled yet. If the world ended tomorrow, what would you do today? I'd hurriedly make my way to an all-you-can-eat buffet.
And some of them are just ridiculously stupid and make 0 sense.
Reading like tweets that should have stayed drafts but instead got reformatted to fill pages in between actual poems. I'm sure even Gabby herself would admit that a lot of these entries shouldn't even be considered poetry. Sad-isfied. It's the whole page. You get it? Because she's sad. Is fied. So she's like happy and sad. And the whole poem is actually just her sending someone a text that says K, and the other person read it. Of course, gotta talk about this one. Link, that's just the title of the poem, and then the poem is in bio. So you read it all together and it's link in bio. That one's kind of a thinker. You really gotta ponder on that one for a while.
Some poems try to sound witty and thoughtful, but if you spend more than 2 seconds actually thinking about it, you immediately realize that it's just rubbish.
I hate it. No, like seriously though, I hate it.
Not only is it poorly written, but Gabby exposes herself for how poorly thought out this was.
Really easy to criticize the worst of this book. Plenty of people have already done that. At its worst, the poems are very not good, and she didn't do herself any favors by openly admitting in the book that much of them only exist because she had a deadline and needed to fill space.
To make it even worse, this book is overpriced at around $17, making this a very low-effort cash grab book by Gabby. Unlike Gabby's horrendous low-effort book, Rhett and Link instead showed us how to actually be creative and publish a successful book. Rhett and Link, creators of one of the most popular YouTube talk shows, Good Mythical Morning, decided to publish a hardcover book on October 1st, 2017, titled Rhett and Link's Book of Mythicality, a field guide to curiosity, creativity, and tomfoolery. This book was described as a hilarious blend of autobiography, trivia, and advice. Funniest book I've ever read in a long time. Rhett and Link's Book of Mythicality really resonates with me, and I think that it will for the rest of my life. I would recommend this read to anyone who has been feeling down or wants to be inspired, because it definitely inspired me to think differently about almost everything. Not only was it very well written, but it was also visually stunning. The book carries a very helpful and positive message to all its readers.
It's also a book that encourages everybody to be creative in any way possible that they know how to be creative. And it gives some really good and really deep insight on how to do that. Maybe you need to get lost somewhere. Maybe you need to embrace immaturity. Maybe you need to create a dance move that nobody's ever heard of before.
And it also allows them to get a detailed and hilarious preview of the friendship that Rhett and Link share, making it a wholesome and inspirational read for everyone. In contrast to Rhett and Link's book, which helps the reader become a better person, YouTuber Shane Dawson's book, instead, makes everyone regret being able to read in the first place. On March 10, 2015, Shane Dawson published a collection of very disturbing personal essays marketed as a comedic and sarcastic book targeted towards teenagers. Except this book is anything but appropriate for teenagers or even adults. I wish I could wash my eyes out. Lots of misogyny, fat shaming, and shaming, none of which are things that I find funny or worthy of book. Would not recommend. Although Shane's audience is primarily kids and teenagers, he includes jokes and phrases that are completely unnecessary and explicit.
But then he just throws in gross, kind of obscene humor. If I could spend my entire life underneath a heated blanket with a handful of my own balls, I would happily do so. Why? Like, is this really necessary? It doesn't add anything other than making you go, ew.
Every chapter contains more and more offensive jokes.
She took a sip of the world's biggest Starbucks Frappuccino and let out a small, uncontainable burp. Is any of this really necessary?
Making fun of people with mental health conditions.
I was one of those kids who would do whatever my friends wanted, even if I knew it was wrong. The number of times we went through a Del Taco drive-thru and acted like we had Tourette's syndrome was countless.
And also slut-shaming his classmate by saying she has dick-sucking lips and so on. And soon afterwards, he starts talking about his sexuality and sexual experiences, and that's when things take a much creepier turn.
He tells us about Lisa Wright and he describes her. She was sweet, pretty, and a little older than me. I say a little older because even though it was only by a couple of years, given my lack of sexual experience, I might as well have been 12. Although I think 12-year-olds get more jobs than I did. So again, we see this example of Shane sexualizing children in a really disgusting way.
And as if this wasn't already obvious that his writing is extremely inappropriate for his target audience, the next chapter is literally just CP.
He opens his laptop and there on Instant Messenger, he sees, and I quote, a picture of a flaccid 9th grade boy with the text, "So baby you like," under it. And he immediately slams his laptop shut.
Shane then goes on to discuss his experience with bullies in school and how he took revenge on them by catfishing them.
Basically, Shane spends like 3 pages describing how he asked this 13 or 14-year-old child in his class for photos of his while trying to flirt with him. And I think Shane tells this story to try and be kind of funny and awkward, but it's not funny. It's genuinely disturbing and a little bit disgusting to read, and I was incredibly uncomfortable.
But this wasn't the end of his evil master plan.
His goal was to solicit CP from this child, take it, print it, and post it all over the school, which is both illegal and incredibly damaging, and just an awful thing to do.
Unfortunately, he did manage to get the photo from the kid.
And in this book that he's writing as a 26-year-old man, he describes said child and shames it publicly in this book, which has been read by millions of people at this point. A 26-year-old man describing and shaming a child's... This is not entertainment.
But that was perhaps not even the most disgusting part of the book, as there were sentences that got even worse.
Me? So you're telling me that you know some of the kids out there are hopeless? Alan, I'm telling you, some of those kids out there smell like abuse and it turns me on.
Absolute worst thing I've read all year. What did I just read? To say this book was terrible, it would be a huge understatement. It was horrible. I cannot believe that anyone will publish crap like this willingly.